Hello, everyone. My name is Talal, and welcome to Popcorn and Soda, the show where we discuss all things movies, pop culture, and so much more. As always, I want to thank each and every one of you for making me a small part of your day. The Nun 2. As you guys all know, my favorite genre is horror. There is something about a good horror movie that I think once it delivers, there is nothing like that in cinema, that it makes you feel, you know, like your heart's just in your throat. You're covering your eyes and just that tense atmosphere that a good horror movie can create. And I'm a sucker for a great horror movie. And I thoroughly enjoy the entire Conjuring universe in which The Nun was spun off from, including the very first Nun. I did thoroughly enjoy the first Nun. I did feel that at parts there were times where it didn't fully realize its full potential, but I always say the star of the Nun movies is, of course, the Nun herself, Miss Bonnie Aarons, who is an absolute sweetheart. And hey, if you do want to get to know Bonnie a bit more and check out her thoughts about the Nun 1, I had the privilege and honor of having her on my podcast, Popcorn and Soda, about 2 years ago when the movie came out, and we spoke all things horror. And you can check that out just, clicking maybe right here, somewhere down here. I'll leave a link right there. But now we're back for a sequel. So, what did I think? Did The Nun 2 live up to its potential that the first one didn't? Was it as scary as the first one? Was it scarier? Let's find out. So, I always go with my initial gut feeling when it comes to these kinds of things. I was a little let down by The Nun 2. And it hurts me to say that because I went in so excited for this film, because I think by far out of Annabelle, all the spin-off movies, all the horror genre movies, to me, The Nun is the scariest. That's the character of the nun and the backstory of it. And I was hoping that, every filmmaker, like every studio, like every actor, we all learn from the first time and we find ways of improving that. That's just circle of life, we just constantly keep growing and evolving. And I thought that there were some big steps backwards in this movie. But it's not to say that I didn't enjoy certain parts of it, and that is what I'd love to get into right now. So, the movie is pretty much a direct sequel to The Nun 1, in which the nun is defeated, but of course, it finds a way to get out through the character of Frenchie, which I think was by far the MVP of this movie. Actor Jonas Bloquet, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Jonas. Amazing actor. And I think he truly carried this film on his back in so many different ways. But back to the movie. Movie picks up, and it's years later. We find that the nun is resurfacing. And this is like no longer just a movie that's set in this monastery as the first one. This is a movie that kind of like globetrots all across Europe. And I think that was something that really let me down, because it made this movie more so like a globe-trotting espionage thriller rather than a good horror movie. I thought The Nun 2 had so much potential to be such a great horror movie, but it ended up becoming just a good movie. That's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that that's, not the goal of every movie, but I don't think it was a good horror movie. And I'll explain why. So, as I mentioned, the scariest part about The Nun is the imagery, it's the music, it's the sound, it's the atmosphere, and a lot of that was missing in this movie. And I think by far the biggest problem that I had with this film was the lack of screen time and the lack of presence of Valak, the demon nun herself. And of course, that is Miss Bonnie Aarons. She has so much screen presence. So much screen presence. And I think it was kind of wasted in a movie like this, because you have this demon nun, and I get why they probably didn't want to oversaturate it and didn't want to like shove it down our throats every 5 seconds with cheap, scares and all that. And I get that. But I don't think it was even utilized well. Maybe in the whole movie, I would say less than 5 minutes of screen time for the nun, which makes no sense to me. But as I mentioned, it may not have been a good horror movie. I did think it was a good movie because there was a lot of layers to the story, and there was a lot of new characters in this movie. Of course, you have the return of Jonas. Of course, the return of Thaisa Farmiga. You had Storm Reed in there, and you had so many different characters in this movie, where it was almost like in the first 30 to 40 minutes of the movie, it was like introducing someone new. Well, here's someone new. Here's another person. And it's almost like, okay, whoa. Like, let's get into the movie, right? Let's start getting into it. And it does. And it is a long movie. It was more than 2 hours long. And to me, movie length isn't a big deal as long as it's being utilized in the right way. And there was times where I found the pacing of it to be a little slow, where I'm like, okay, was that scene needed in order to get here? Was that really needed? Was that character really meant to have to be in the movie? Yeah, so that's how I kind of felt about a lot of the tonal shifts and a lot of the overall themes of The Nun. But as I did say, this is a good movie. Maybe not be a good horror movie. It is a good movie. So I do want to give a shout out to the cast. I do want to give a shout out to the set decorators. And of course, big shout out to Bonnie Aarons. Because when the scenes that she is in the movie, some of them literally will scare. They will scare you like solid. They will scare you. And there were a few scenes where I was just like, oh. Especially watching it in a theater. Because I love watching horror movies in a theater. Only in a VIP theater. And that's a whole other story for a whole other day. It creates this rich atmosphere. It creates this overall tense environment with the sound and the big screen. And there were some scenes that were just amazing. I loved, absolutely loved so much of like the visual cinematography of this film. Now, the downside, as I mentioned, is just I couldn't click with the horror elements of this movie. It was more so a thriller, and it was more so like a spy espionage movie at certain points. I know it sounds crazy, but that's how it was. And it was a good movie. It was a very good movie, just not a good horror movie, in my opinion. That's okay. Hey, as I always say, art is in the eye of the beholder. Something that I liked, you may not. And something that you liked, I may not. So here's what I always hope for everyone. I hope you all had a great time with The Nun. Because, hey, we need movies like these to succeed because it gives us more great films, especially in a genre that I truly, truly love. So you know me, I don't rate movies on numbers or stars. To me, it's simple. Is it a movie you would watch in a theater? Is it a streaming movie? Or is this like a rainy day movie where you're kind of just flipping through the channels? To me, I would say that this movie falls in that sweet spot of streaming and watch in a theater. I wouldn't definitively say it's either or. It all depends on you and what you want your experience of this movie to be. In a theater, because you of course have the big screen and the audio and some of those jump scares that are in the movie, they're just 10 times more amplified when you're in that environment. But this is a great Halloween movie. We're in October, and I think people would thoroughly enjoy watching this on a Friday night with the lights closed, with friends, and just everyone just kind of like gathered together around a TV. And those are the things that I grew up on, those experiences. So I think people will enjoy this movie nevertheless. So if you like the Conjuring universe, and hey, even if you like the Nun one, I do recommend checking out the Nun 2 because I do think that this character has so much potential and no spoilers, but I do think there is so much more story that they can tell with this character and this cast because I truly love the cast of this film. So that is my review of The Nun 2. So what did you guys think? You know I love hearing from you, so please do comment below right down there and let me know what your favorite moments were, your favorite characters. If you want to see a Nun 3, is that something you're interested in? The movie did great at the box office, so it is a very big possibility we may get a Nun 3. Are you interested in that? What would you like to see in the Nun 3? Ooh, that'll be something fun. As always, as I mentioned, I appreciate each and every one of you for making me a small part of your day, and that was my review of The Nun 2.